Hey, I'm Dave Keating, and I'm here at the Energy Visions event on decarbonizing transport. I'm joined by Mark Gainsborough, the Executive Vice President for New Energies at Shell. Mark, thank you so much for joining us here tonight. We've been talking about new policy initiatives here, and obviously there's a whole range of policy tools that are being considered to decarbonize transport. What do you think is the most important policy tool to get emissions from transport down?
I don't think it's right to talk about one most important policy tool for decarbonisation in transport, because frankly there are a range of technologies and fuels that are going to be coming into the market, and we need policies that encourage all of those to be deployed. So I think that in terms of the internal combustion engine, that's going to be around using liquid fuels for a long time yet. Other technologies are definitely going to come into the market, but it takes a while for them to reach mass market scale. So decarbonising internal combustion engines and fuels is really, really important. I think the technology can be, internal combustion engine technology can be improved through innovation, continued innovation. I think there are policies to help support that. But very importantly, we need policies that are supportive of decarbonising liquid fuels. And the best option we have to do that at the moment is biofuels. So having policies that are supportive of both conventional biofuels and advanced biofuels, for me, is a key requirement going forward.
Now, speaking of technologies, there's a whole lot of technologies available for vehicles that we've been talking about here tonight. In addition to conventional combustion engines using fossil fuels, we've also got biofuels, we've got hydrogen electric, we've got battery electric. What do you think is going to be the main fuel of the future, the main technology for cars when we think 20 years from now?
Again, I think in 20 years' time, it'll still be a real mix. We're going to see a lot more electric vehicles on the road in 20 years' time. It's an open question how many of those will be battery electric versus hydrogen fuel cell electric. I think actually in certain uses, hydrogen will be a better option. But that depends, and it depends how the technology plays out, how much batteries improve over that period. So we're going to see a lot more electric vehicles, but we're still going to see a lot of internal combustion engines, either fueled by liquids or by gas. And so thinking about how we decarbonise the internal combustion engine still remains a top priority. And in terms of where you can make a big impact in the next 20 years, that's probably the biggest single impact.
How does technology fit into the mix when we're thinking about the big grand strategy of decarbonizing transport?
I think for sure technology has an important role to play. And I see it being technology and regulation have to work hand in hand. You can see the technology being applied in terms of better powertrains, new powertrains coming into the market. You can see the technology being applied in terms of new fuels, and in particular, getting the cost of new fuels down. You think about electric vehicles in the future. For them to really be cost competitive, you need to have the renewable power, and we've seen lots of technology improvements reducing the cost of renewable power. I think we're going to see technology playing a role in hydrogen, in getting the costs down in hydrogen as a fuel. Will rely on a lot of innovation, both in the way the hydrogen is produced and also the way that we distribute it around the network. So I think there's a huge role for technology in all of the options that we have.
At the end of the day, if we really want to decarbonize transport, is it going to be necessary that people drive their cars less?
It's a great question. Do people have to give up on their access to personal mobility to decarbonize? I suspect, we do see new business models for mobility as a service emerging. We see much more of a sort of sharing economy. Shell, we're experimenting with some of those new digital business models. We think that actually using digital technology and big data can help to optimize transportation quite a bit. We've got a pilot program we're running at the moment around freight optimization in developing cities. Really interesting in how you can improve the efficiency of freight transportation in an urban setting. It's better for customers, it's better for suppliers, and it saves CO2 and congestion in the process. So what's not to like about those sort of business models? We've got another interesting app we've developed that helps on-demand drivers, like Uber drivers, work more effectively. It uses big data to direct them to where they're most likely to get another fare, increases their revenues by 30% on average, and again, it promotes that sharing economy, which we know is in the end good for the environment. But I think it's wrong to try and dictate that people give up on personal mobility. I don't think we want to tell them they can't drive or have a car. But in the end, if the alternatives are good enough, they'll make a choice about what works for them. Personally, I'm living in The Hague, in Holland. I don't have a car. I use Uber, I use public transport, and I've got a car sharing scheme where the nearest bay is 80 meters from my front door, so I don't need a car. But not everybody's in the same happy position that I am at the moment.
Now, one of the roadblocks for technologies has been infrastructure. When we think about alternative fuels or electric vehicles, it needs infrastructure to fill up the cars on the road, and this infrastructure hasn't been being developed as fast as some people would like. What can be done to encourage some of this alternative fuel infrastructure being built on the roads?
Infrastructure, for sure, is a challenge when you're introducing a new fuel and some new technologies. I mean, we've certainly seen that to be an issue. As we've tried to think about how to bring hydrogen into the mix as a transport fuel, there's a real chicken and egg problem in that you need a refueling infrastructure and you need the vehicles. So I think one of the key things is to work closely between the different parties to make sure the infrastructure gets put in place at the right time. So, we realize that we need to find a way to do that. Putting infrastructure in is expensive and difficult, so you need to find a good way of syndicating the costs of doing that. So, the way we've approached that with hydrogen in Germany, where we have a plan to roll out 400 sites through an industry consortium. It's about a consortium of parties working together, very closely aligned with the government, who's also being very supportive for that program. So I think a certain level of government help and support is needed, but you also need to make sure the auto manufacturers and the fuel suppliers are working very closely together. To be honest, I think the biggest infrastructure challenge we're going to face isn't going to be with liquid fuels, because we kind of know how to do that, or with gaseous fuels. In the end, it'll be with electrical vehicles. So the infrastructure challenge you have with EVs looks small when you start out because you only have to put up a few charge posts, but gets very big when you've got lots of vehicles drawing a lot of power from the grid. So there's a lot of upgrading of local distribution grid for power that's going to be driven by electric vehicles. But it'll be a few years before we have to face that particular challenge.
Well, Mark, thank you so much for joining us here tonight.